Hey, how you doing, guys? Welcome to yet another episode of Hockey on the Spot with Brandon Barenfeld. I'm Brandon Barenfeld, and we are continuing with our 30 teams in 30 days for the entire month of August. And for today's episode, we are going to be talking about the Phoenix Coyotes. The Phoenix Coyotes, very interesting season last year. After going all the way to the Western Conference Finals and losing to the Los Angeles Kings in 5 games back in 2011 2012, this past season, in a year where they were expected to build off that, they had a very unexpected setback where they finished 10th in the Western Conference, 19th overall in the league, and failed to make the playoffs. Injuries played a big role in that, particularly to their goaltender, Mike Smith, who never was able to recover from those injuries that year, but now he's had an entire off season to recover. They give him a 6-year contract extension. So in the hopes that he will be their next franchise goaltender. So a lot of faith to put in a goaltender that had a very rough year last year. So on the other hand, the Phoenix Coyotes making a huge splash this offseason, a deal with uh, the Board of Governors and Glendale, Arizona, finally coming to an agreement. The deal has been finalized. Today was the deadline to finalize the deal. Um, got guys named George Gosby and Anthony LeBlanc. They will now be the new owners of the Phoenix Coyotes, and they will remain in Glendale, Arizona for a long time to come. 15 years, I believe, was the deal. Um, so finally, after all this talk of them moving out of Phoenix and possibly going to like Seattle or something, all those talks can finally be put to an end. All the rumors are over, and at least for now, and the Phoenix Coyotes will remain in Phoenix, at least for now. However, there was a catch to this signing, not a very big one, but a catch that starting next season, they will no longer be called the Phoenix Coyotes, that they will be called the Arizona Coyotes, which isn't much of anything at all. They're still going to be the same team. It's just they will no longer be representing the city of Phoenix. They will be representing the entire state of Arizona, which is a lot better and a big upgrade, I think. So this 2013-2014 season will be the final season that they will be called the Phoenix Coyotes. So anyway, moving on from that, outside of that, it's been a pretty lopsided off season for the Phoenix Coyotes. Quiet but active. Um, Again, they get their goaltender Mike Smith signing him to a 6-year deal after a sketchy year last year, so a big risk to take. However, the big move that they made, arguably the biggest move, they give a 5-year contract extension to their head coach, Dave Tippett. He would have been able to sign with other teams this offseason. However, he chooses to stay in Phoenix, and that is a good signing in my opinion. He's such a good coach and knows how to coach both ends of the ice. So, very, very good signing for the Phoenix Coyotes. But other than those two moves, not too much going on in Phoenix, with the exception of one humongous move, and we'll get to that in a minute. They did lose a few guys. Um, they really did lose. They lost about 6 guys or so. Not too many of importance. The most important of them all, probably the biggest loss for them this offseason, the loss of center Boyd Gordon, who signs a 4-year deal with the Edmonton Oilers, and their backup goaltender, Jason LaBarbera, would join him, also going to the Edmonton Oilers. So that left a couple of small holes in Phoenix. And then they had some other departures as well. Both of the Johnsons, Nick and Chad, going to the Boston Bruins, Alexander Bolduc going to the St. Louis Blues, and Chris Connor, who played at the end of the season, going to the Pittsburgh Penguins. So nothing of bit significance there as far as those are concerned. The big concerns are the two guys going to the Edmonton Oilers, Jason LaBarbera who and Boyd Gordon. They lose a backup goaltender, and they lose not only a guy who wins a lot of faceoffs, but their best defensive forward by far. So the key for the two moves the Coyotes really need to make this year were to find a backup goaltender and to find another center to replace Boyd Gordon, which they did, and we'll get to that in just a minute. They filled both of the needs they needed to fill and also grab the depth player. The small signing they made, they signed Tim Kennedy over from the San Jose Sharks, a left winger. He'll add some depth, but a guy who's more of a 14th forward, if that. Don't expect to see him playing too much, but when he does, he will add some depth. So, Tim Kennedy coming over from the San Jose Sharks. Also coming over from the San Jose Sharks, joining Tim Kennedy, is goaltender Thomas Greiss, a native out of Germany. He signs with the Phoenix Coyotes as their backup goaltender to not only replace Jason LaBarbera. In my opinion, he is a better goaltender than Jason LaBarbera, so a guy who could give Mike Smith some time off. So they fill a need there as far as backup goaltending goes. So not a very active offseason as far as bringing in new faces for the Phoenix Coyotes. However, one move that they did make this offseason on the opening day of the free agent frenzy, which was also one of the biggest moves made by any team this offseason, signing the number 4 ranked free agent this year, bringing in centerman Mike Ribeiro coming over from the Washington Capitals. Mike Ribeiro had a stellar year for the Washington Capitals last year. Was finished second on the team with 13 goals and 49 points. Well, the points are second on the team, I should say. And at one point, he actually led the Caps in points over Alex Ovechkin until Ovechkin went on that tear toward the end of the season. So at times, he was their best player. And last season, in a sense, he kind of took over Nicklas Backstrom's role as the number 1 center and bumped Backstrom down. Now, of course, Backstrom will go back to being number 1, and who knows who'll be their number 2. But now, anyway, Mike Ribeiro reuniting with head coach Dave Tippett, a guy who Dave Tippett absolutely loves. They signed him to a 4-year deal, and this is a great move for the Phoenix Coyotes. Not only do they replace Boyd Gordon, but it is an upgrade to Boyd Gordon, a big upgrade, specifically offensively. Maybe not so much defensively. They'll miss Boyd Gordon's defense for sure and penalty killing, but for Mike Ribeiro, they get a guy who's a playmaker, a good skater, has a lot of skill, excellent hands, and a guy who just makes everyone around him better. So I think it's a move that the Phoenix Coyotes needed to make because last season they really did not have a legitimate number 1 center. Let's face it, Martin Hanzal was filling the role of a number 1 center, and Antoine Vermette was their number 2. But let's face it, Martin Hanzal, he's a good player and all, but he's more of a defensive forward / power forward. He's not a number 1 center, that's for sure. He really hasn't lived up to that part of his draft status. He's not a number 1 center. He's more of a number 2, 3 guy. Same with Antoine Vermette. His days as a top 6 forward, at least for last year, looked like they came to a close. He did not have a very good year last year, so he, at this point, at least to begin the year, is more of a third-line guy. So they did need a legitimate number 1 center, and they got that with Mike Ribeiro, a guy who is going to make everyone around him better, especially on the power play. And it'll be interesting to see who he plays with. My best guess, he plays with a goal scorer like Radim Verbata on the right and a youngster like Michael Bodker on the left, a guy who is still developing. Mike Ribeiro's a guy who's going to help him develop a lot better. but that to me should be the top line. Ribeiro with Verbata and Bodker. Verbata had a solid year last year, but not his typical kind of seasons. This is a guy who is a sniper, and he didn't score as many goals as he usually does last year. So a playmaker like Ribeiro could get him back to doing that. So, and also in another sense, it also is the long-awaited replacement for Ray Whitney, who a couple off seasons ago signed with the Dallas Stars, and when they lost Ray Whitney, they were unable to replace it that last off season. Now they do with Mike Ribeiro. So excellent move by the Phoenix Coyotes. And for the Phoenix Coyotes this year, again, outside of Ribeiro, nothing really special. Again, just those two guys from the San Jose Sharks, Tim Kennedy, a depth winger, and Thomas Greiss, a backup goaltender, which was a need. Um, so good move, good off season for the Phoenix Coyotes, but also a little on the quiet side. So for their roster this year, this is going to be this is really the main question for the Phoenix Coyotes, in my opinion. Who plays? Which youngsters come up to play? Because it's pretty obvious they don't have enough roster spots to make a full team without calling up some youngsters or signing some guys. I don't know if they necessarily are willing to go out and sign some guys. I think this is a team that's really looking more toward the development stage, at least a little bit. Not stretching it like the Calgary Flames have to do this year or like the Edmonton Oilers have been doing the past couple of years. Just a little bit. Just to get a few youngsters up. Let's see how they do. I think there are definitely some guys who I think can definitely compete for that for those roster spots. And yeah, it's really interesting. Again, Michael Bodker, they're gonna try to get him better. Shane Doan, he's not getting any younger, so they definitely need a youngster. Maybe a guy like Chris Brown, who is their number one prospect at the moment. Maybe he plays. Maybe he's ready to play. He played a few games last year, didn't have a point. So maybe he plays. Maybe he's ready to jump up to the NHL level. Maybe Max Domi, who was their first-round draft pick this year, 12th overall, son of former NHL grit enforcer Ty Domi, but much more of a scorer than his dad. Excellent player, and a guy with excellent speed and vision. Maybe he plays this year. Definitely some questions. And also, as far as their fourth line goes, maybe it comes time for a guy like Rob Klinkhammer to play. They got him a little while ago from the Ottawa Senators, and he's a grit guy, big body, so I think he could be a good addition to their fourth line. And then another guy who could possibly play, who, by the way, was actually another addition for the Phoenix Coyotes this year, Brandon Yip, who is coming over from the Nashville Predators. This is a guy who, when healthy, is a solid player, but has been unable to get healthy. So hopefully he can be healthy this year, and if so, he could add some depth to a team that definitely needs it. So they definitely need to find some kind of formula, because this is a team that finished last place in the Western Conference last year on the power play, and their goal scoring even strength wasn't great either. So they definitely need to get that figured out. And then on defense, where they definitely have they're definitely much deeper on defense with a youngster like Oliver Ekman-Larsson leading the way. Also, Zbigniew McCulloch, Keith Yandel, Rostislav Klesla, Derek Morris. But then there's also a sixth spot available. Many think that David Schlemko would probably be the sixth guy. However, there's a youngster by the name of Michael Stone who also will be battling for that spot. So I think he definitely can do it. An offensive type defenseman, big body, big shot from the point. He played a few games last year. Personally, I think he is ready to play. They also got a kind of a forgotten youngster down there too, Chris Summers, a former first-round pick. But I don't know if he still might not be exactly ready to play. So I honestly think, my personal opinion, Michael Stone should play this year, and David Schlemko should be the seventh guy. So that's my opinion. And Michael Stone actually, despite being a youngster, has potential as a top four. So good. I think it's a good situation for the Phoenix Coyotes to be in. Next, let's take a look at their top 10 prospects. Let me tell you something about the Phoenix Coyotes. If there's anything about this team that is very, very deep, it is their prospect pool. The Phoenix Coyotes, one of the deeper prospect pools in the National Hockey League, much deeper prospect pool than the Los Angeles Kings or the Edmonton Oilers. Um, around the level of the Anaheim Ducks and Calgary Flames, probably little better than the Calgary Flames, just about the same as the Anaheim Ducks. So very deep prospect pool. They definitely have some guys. Again, Chris Brown, their top-ranked prospect. Max Domi also on there as their second. Lucas Lazio, who actually is another kid who could potentially play this year, from what I'm hearing. They have goaltender Mark Vishentin in there, a guy who could be a superstar, but not right now. Henrik Samuelsson. They got a lot of great guys, but the guy on that top 10 list who catches my eye the most, their fourth best prospect, Brandon Gormley. This is a kid who back in 2010 caught himself in the same exact situation as Cam Fowler. Both players slipped down after expecting to be top picks. Cam Fowler would go 12th overall by the Anaheim Ducks. Brandon Gormley would go one pick later to the Phoenix Coyotes. Fowler is already playing in the NHL. He played as a rookie as an 18-year-old. Brandon Gormley, however, has still been developing, but I think it's paying dividends for him because this is a guy who's always been known for being a defensive defenseman with excellent skating and puck handling skills, but has over the years developed his offensive game as well. So now he's kind of becoming a complete player, a two-way defenseman, another guy who could be put into consideration to use this year. However, I personally think he'll have one more year in the American Hockey League to develop, and then next season he'll probably be a regular in their roster because he's definitely knocking on the door at this point. He's definitely almost ready. And now, the last but not least, the guy on the Phoenix Coyotes who I think needs to play well in order for the Phoenix Coyotes to get back into the playoffs. The guy who I think needs to play well, no question whatsoever, has got to be Michael Bodker. Michael Bodker was their first-round draft pick back in 2008, Danish forward, left winger, and a guy whose development has been taking longer than expected. He hasn't become the player that they've expected him to be. He played well a couple seasons ago, and at the beginning of the lockout-shortened year, he was playing well, and then in the second half of the season, he slumped. So if the Coyotes have any hopes of getting in the playoffs, this is the year that Michael Bodker needs to break out. He has to have a breakout year this year, and like I said, I think he'll get a chance this year playing on the top line with Mike Ribeiro and probably Radim Verbata. So I think this is the guy that needs to play well for them. Overall, are the Phoenix Coyotes a playoff team? Really, really tough to say at this point. Even though they didn't make the playoffs last year, a lot of that had to do with injuries. But to me, this still looks like a pretty good team with potential. So for now, I'm actually going to say yes. I think they will be back in the playoffs this year. However, if they do make it, it'll probably be as an 8th seed, but no higher than a 7th seed, and even that's stretching it. So 8th seed most likely, 7th seed is stretching it, but overall I think they will be back in the playoffs this year, despite the new alignment. All right, guys, thank you for joining me. That'll do it for episode 6 of Hockey on the Spot. Join me again tomorrow when we cover the San Jose Sharks. So until then, this has been Hockey on the Spot with Brandon Barenfeld. I'm Brandon Barenfeld, and tune in next time. Goodbye.